Okay, here is the second group of readings, video number 3. We're covering Ostrom et al. 1999 and Vollan and Ostrom 2010. Eleanor Ostrom is a political economist who has created a career around critiquing Garrett Hardin's piece. Um, and I think her critiques are really important, and I think they are much more hopeful than we were left with Hardin. So I'm going to start out with a quote. And the starkness of Hardin's original statement has been used by many scholars and policymakers to rationalize central government control of all common pool resources and to paint a disempowering, pessimistic vision of the human prospect. Users are pictured as trapped in a situation they cannot change. Thus, it is argued that solutions must be imposed on users by external authorities. The tragedy is really what Ostrom critiques, the idea that this is inevitable, basically that the abuse of resources and the individual self-maximization um, is inevitable. So in this article, the 2009 piece, or the 1999 piece, she describes the advances in the understanding and managing of commons problems that have been made since 1968, and there have been many. What she has found is that negative outcomes of the management of common pool resources are real and should be treated as such, but they are not inevitable. In fact, she points out that there are many more solutions that exist than Hardin proposed. In fact, there are no cookie-cutter solutions. There are two solutions provided by Hardin. Socialization, sorry, not socialization, socialism and privatization. So she starts off her piece with an example of socialism and privatization applied to two grazing contexts, and contrasts that with a traditional group property regime. In this case, it includes Russia, China, and Mongolia. And Russia and China had the socialism and privatization options, and Mongolia continued the traditional group property regime. And in fact, the outcome in this case was that Mongolia had the least damage to their natural resource base through their group property regime, and the socialism and privatization worked much worse in managing these common pool resources in Russia and China. An important caveat is again that there are no cookie cutter solutions, and that's her kind of her main argument, is that solutions must involve the broader social setting. She focuses a lot on collaboration, and as a principle, collaboration is usually going to work better than paternalism and control. If we've learned anything from the history of colonialism, it's that resources are degraded with systems that are based in control. I encourage you to keep this in mind, that this idea that privatization and socialism are not the only two options, especially as you hear more and more about water issues across the world. If you attended the collaborative conversation in fall 2014, you'll have heard me touch on this. This would be a whole class for another time, but I'm of the belief that some common pool resources should not ever be privatized, and I believe strongly that water is one of them. So Hardin's piece has been so influential. You hear the tragedy of the commons thrown around as if it is exactly what he paints it as, exactly inevitable. And it, like Ostrom acknowledges, it has shaped policy and it has shaped broad-based thinking on natural resource management. It's not the only way, and it's not the best way in many situations. So moving on to Vollan and Ostrom's piece from 2010, um, this piece shows many examples of the reality that people can and do cooperate to produce shared long-term benefits. The assumption in much of economics, mainstream economics, and the assumption in The Tragedy of the Commons piece by Garrett Hardin is that individuals will always maximize short-term benefits to themselves. However, that is not the case. And this is especially true for natural resource management with private landowners, which my research at Auburn focused on pretty extensively. And in fact, when people's basic needs are met, they are much more interested in maintaining natural resources beyond their lifetime and beyond their own benefit. Land trusts are built on this principle that people will not just maximize short-term benefits to themselves. And I'll kind of just throw out there that I think this is one of the goals of sustainability in general, or at least it echoes the goal of sustainability, that everybody, and I'm not being species specific here, that everybody has enough to live well while preserving the resources for the future everybody's to have enough and to live well. I believe that is possible, and kind of my work is helping to advance that goal. There is a Greek proverb that says, "Society grows great when old men plant trees whose branches they will never sit under," and that is kind of a driving principle of my interest in my work and my research, and it's strongly echoed in this piece that the best for society is not always the best for the individual, but that people often make decisions that are not in their own short-term benefit to themselves. Through this piece by Vollan and Ostrom in 2010, they review many social experiments that yield pro-social outcomes, where people actually make decisions that are not in their short-term benefits, and they're not in their benefits to themselves. I want to throw out the important caveat that is discussed extensively by Amartya Sen, who is another, along with Elinor Ostrom, is another Nobel Prize winner in economics. My two favorite economists are Ostrom and Sen, and his whole principle is that, or one of his big ideas is that when people's basic needs are met, they are much more able to make these pro-social group decisions. So let's consider that when we're thinking about food, when we're thinking about resource use for food. What does it mean for everyone to have their needs met and to be living well while also managing sustainably? All right, we'll pick up next time.